If you took a job at the Bergen Kontor in the 1400s, here's what you signed up for. You'd live inside a walled compound with dozens of other men, sleeping in a shared dormitory, eating together, working together, and forbidden, by written statute, from marrying a local Norwegian woman for as long as you held your position. You couldn't own property outside the walls. You'd spend years as an unpaid apprentice before you were trusted to trade a single barrel on your own account. Break the rules and the punishment wasn't a fine. It was expulsion from the only network in Northern Europe that could make you rich. That's not a monastery, that's a business. Specifically, it's a Hanseatic Kontor, and the word itself is doing a lot of hiding, because it sounds like it just means trading post, a warehouse with a fancy name. What it actually was is closer to a legal fortress, a self-governing merchant colony, operating inside someone else's kingdom, answerable to almost nobody but itself. So let's find out what it actually cost to be part of one of these, how the money really moved, and why the strangest rule in the whole system, the marriage ban, wasn't some odd cultural quirk, it was the entire business model. Start with what the Hanseatic League even is, because you're not joining one company, you're joining a network of roughly 200 northern German and Baltic cities, from Lübeck to Danzig to Cologne, that have agreed to act together in trade, defend each other's merchants, and, when it suits them, collectively boycott anyone who doesn't play by their rules. And the League's power in any given foreign city runs through exactly one institution, the Kontor. There are 4 major ones: Bergen, in Norway, controlling the stockfish trade; Novgorod, deep in Russia, controlling furs and wax; Bruges, in Flanders, the commercial hub for cloth and finance; and London, the Steelyard, sitting right on the Thames, with its own wharf, warehouses and, for centuries, its own exemptions from English taxes, that English merchants themselves had to pay. Here's what it costs you to be part of this. First, entry itself isn't free or automatic. You're typically the son of an established Hanseatic merchant family, sent from a city like Lübeck to serve years as an unpaid or barely paid apprentice inside a kontor before you're allowed to trade on your own account at all. That's not incidental hardship. It's cheap, controlled labor for the senior merchants running the compound, and it doubles as a screening process. Nobody who hasn't survived a decade inside the system gets trusted with the League's actual trade secrets, prices, supply routes, and the relationships with local rulers that the whole business depends on. Once you're trading, you're paying dues into the Kontor's common fund, which covers everything from the compound's upkeep to bribes and gifts for local officials to, when necessary, funding a fleet to enforce an embargo. And you're living under Kontor law, not local law, internal courts, internal punishments, and a code of conduct written specifically to stop you from doing the one thing that could quietly destroy the entire system: going native, marrying into the local community, trading outside the network, leaking prices to a competitor. The bachelor rule at Bergen isn't about morality, it's about making sure your loyalty, your assets, and your information stay inside the Kontor and not inside Norway. So what's actually moving through this system, and where's the real money? At Bergen, it's stockfish, dried cod, a staple protein that keeps for years and can be shipped anywhere in Christian Europe, including every fasting day on the Catholic calendar, which is a lot of days. The Kontor doesn't just buy fish. Over time, it structures the relationship so Norwegian fishermen become dependent on Hanseatic credit and Hanseatic grain shipped in from the Baltic, meaning the League isn't simply trading with Bergen, it's financing the very people it's buying from, locking in supply and margin at the same time. At Novgorod, it's furs and beeswax moving west, in exchange for cloth and metal goods moving east, run out of a walled compound called the Peterhof, under terms so strict that Novgorod authorities occasionally shut the whole Kontor down for years at a time during political disputes, and the League simply waited them out, because it held the leverage in the relationship, not the other way around. And at London, the Steelyard's core asset isn't even goods, it's a legal privilege. Reduced customs duties on cloth exports that English merchants themselves didn't get, negotiated and defended for literally hundreds of years, worth more to the Hanseatic merchants operating there than almost anything they physically shipped. That's the real answer to where the profit hides. It isn't in any single cargo. It's in negotiated legal advantage, defended collectively, generation after generation, tax exemptions, guaranteed access, and the standing threat of a league-wide boycott against any city or ruler who tried to revoke those terms. A single merchant has no leverage against a king. 200 cities acting together, capable of cutting off an entire region's access to Baltic grain or German cloth in a coordinated embargo, absolutely does. You are not just a trader, you're a shareholder in a private international pressure campaign that's been running for 2 centuries before you ever arrived. Now the risk, because a system built entirely on negotiated privilege, only works for as long as the other side keeps honoring the negotiation. Local resentment builds constantly. The whole point of Kontor privileges is that local merchants don't get the same deal, and nobody stays happy about that forever. In London specifically, English merchants spend a century and a half lobbying the Crown to strip the Steelyard's exemptions, and in 1598, Elizabeth I finally does it, expelling the Hanseatic merchants from London entirely, and ending centuries of privileged trade in a single royal order. Novgorod's Kontor gets closed outright by Ivan III in 1494, seized along with its goods, as Moscow's power grows and its tolerance for a foreign merchant colony inside Russian territory runs out, and the League's own internal power to punish the world with boycotts starts to fail once rival trading powers, Dutch, English, later Swedish, build merchant fleets strong enough to simply ignore a Hanseatic embargo rather than comply with it. A system that runs on collective leverage stops working the moment somebody calls the bluff. Run a season through this the way we always do here, since the League itself never kept one tidy set of books for the whole network. This is a reconstruction built from what the surviving Kontor and city records do show. In a good period, you're dues by real protection. The local ruler honors the Kontor's privileges, and the reduced tolls plus the guaranteed supply of stockfish, furs, or cloth mean your trading margin comfortably beats what an independent merchant outside the network could ever achieve alone. Years of unpaid apprenticeships start paying for themselves once you're senior enough to trade on your own account, and eventually take a seat in the Kontor's own governance. In a bad period, local resentment boils over. A ruler like Ivan III or Elizabeth simply revokes what you were promised, and every advantage the Kontor gave you, the very reason you spent a decade as an unpaid apprentice to get inside it, disappears by royal decree, with no court to appeal to, because the whole point of the system was operating outside local law, and now local law has stopped caring. So who actually got rich? Not the apprentice grinding through his unpaid years in the Bergen dormitory. For him, this is a long, disciplined bet on future access, not present income. The real money sat with the senior merchant families back in cities like Lübeck who held positions across multiple Kontors at once, spreading their risk across Bergen fish, Novgorod furs, and London cloth simultaneously, so that a single bad political turn in one city couldn't touch the whole fortune. They're the ones who effectively owned the network the apprentice was working to survive inside of. That's the real shape of this business. A Hanseatic Kontor was never really a trading post. It was a legal privilege, built and defended collectively over centuries, wrapped in a compound that looked like a monastery, because keeping outsiders out, and keeping insiders loyal, was the actual product being manufactured there. The stockfish, the furs, the cloth, those were just what happened to be moving through a system whose real value was the access itself. And the moment a king or a city decided that access no longer served them, no amount of dried cod was going to save you.